Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching stars drift past through the massive viewing screen. 3 months had passed since her fleet left Earth's solar system. 12 ships carried 50,000 humans into deep space. Their mission was simple: find new worlds to call home. The bridge hummed with quiet activity. Officers checked their stations. Engineers monitored the ship's systems. Everything was normal until Lieutenant Rodriguez turned from his console with wide eyes. "Captain, we're getting a signal." Sarah walked over to his station. "What kind of signal?" "It's strange. The language sounds like Galactic Standard." Sarah felt her heart skip. Galactic Standard was the ancient alien language they found carved into ruins on Mars. Scientists had spent decades learning it from old stone tablets. No one expected to hear it spoken by living beings. "Put it on speakers," she ordered. Static filled the bridge. Then a voice came through, speaking in broken, desperate words. "Help. Please help us. We are dying. The devourers come again. They consume everything. Our worlds burn. Our children scream. We call to the Deathworlders. We know you are real. The old stories speak of you. Please." The message repeated several times, then cut to silence. Sarah looked around the bridge. Every officer stared at her. They all understood what they had heard. Somewhere in space, aliens were calling for help, and they were calling humans Deathworlders. "Rodriguez, can you trace that signal?" "Yes, Captain. It came from the Kepler system, about 6 days away at maximum speed." Sarah thought carefully. Their mission was to explore and find colony worlds. But aliens were asking for help. Real aliens who knew about humans somehow. "Send a message to all ships in the fleet," she said. "Tell them we're changing course, we're going to help." Admiral Marcus Thompson appeared on the bridge 20 minutes later. He was Sarah's second in command, an older man with gray hair and serious eyes. "Sarah, are you sure about this? We don't know anything about these aliens. We don't know what these devourers are." "They asked for help, Marcus. We can't ignore that." Marcus nodded slowly. "The other captains are worried. Some think it might be a trap. Maybe it is, but if it's real, we have to try." The fleet changed course toward the Kepler system. For 6 days, they traveled through empty space. Sarah spent hours studying the message with Dr. Elena Vasquez, their best expert on alien languages. "They called us Deathworlders," Elena said, during one of their meetings. "That's not a friendly term. It means beings from a deadly world." "Earth isn't that dangerous," Sarah replied. Elena laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Sarah, we evolved from hunting animals. We have forward-facing eyes like predators. We can run for hours without stopping. We survive in hot deserts and frozen ice. Most planets in the galaxy aren't like Earth. To aliens from gentle worlds, we might seem like monsters, but they still asked for help. Yes, that means whatever these devourers are, they're worse than monsters." On the 6th day, they arrived at the Kepler system. What they found made everyone on the bridge gasp. A massive space station floated near the system's star. It was bigger than any city on Earth. Strange ships surrounded it, unlike anything humans had ever built. The ships looked grown rather than made, with smooth curves and organic shapes. "Captain," said Rodriguez, "I'm getting hundreds of signals from the station. Different languages, but I think they're all asking who we are. Send a response in Galactic Standard. Tell them we're humans from Earth. We came because we heard their call for help." Minutes passed. Then a new voice spoke over the communication system. This one was clearer, more practiced with the ancient language. "Humans. The Deathworlders are real. You came. We did not think. We hoped but did not believe." The voice paused, then continued. "I am Keeper Zelani of the Kithara Collective. Welcome to Sanctuary Station. Please dock your ships carefully. Many here are afraid of you." "Afraid of us?" Sarah asked. "You are predators from a death world. Your very existence terrifies most beings. But we need your help. The devourers come, closer each day. They have destroyed 17 worlds in our sector. Billions are dead." Sarah felt cold. "How long do we have? Perhaps a few weeks. Maybe less." Their advanced scouts probe our defenses daily. As the human fleet approached the station, Sarah could see ships fleeing in all directions. Some aliens were running away just from seeing human vessels. "Elena," Sarah said quietly, "what have we gotten ourselves into?" "I don't know. But look at that station. It's full of refugees. Families running from something so terrible they'd rather trust death world predators than face it alone." The Indomitable docked at Sanctuary Station with careful precision. Sarah, prepared to meet aliens face-to-face for the first time. She chose a small team, Marcus, Elena, and 2 Marines for protection. The airlock opened to reveal a long corridor filled with strange beings. They walked on different numbers of legs. Some had scales, others had fur. All of them had large eyes that watched the humans with obvious fear. A tall, thin creature approached them. It had blue skin and 4 arms. When it spoke, its voice was the one they had heard on the radio. "I am Keeper Zilani. Thank you for coming, humans." Sarah stepped forward. "I'm Captain Chen. We want to help, but we need to understand what we're fighting." Zilani's large eyes looked sad. "Come. I will show you the records. You will see what the Devourers do to worlds. You will see why we are afraid." As they walked through the station, Sarah saw thousands of aliens living in crowded spaces. Children clung to their parents. Old beings sat quietly with haunted expressions. "How many refugees are here?" Elena asked. "Nearly 1 million, Zilani replied. "From 17 different worlds, all that remains of once great civilizations." They reached a large room filled with screens and data displays. Zilani touched controls. With his 4 hands, and images appeared. Sarah watched in horror as planet after planet died. The Devourers came in massive fleets. Their ships looked alive, covered in spikes and moving parts. They landed on worlds and began consuming everything. Plants, animals, even the rocks themselves were dissolved and absorbed. "They take everything," Zilani explained. "They eat worlds down to the core. Then they move on." "How do we fight them?" Marcus asked. Zilani's expression became even sadder. "We don't. The galaxy has tried to fight them for millions of years. They adapt to every weapon, every strategy. They learn from every battle. Nothing stops them." "Then why did you call us?" "Because the old stories say Deathworlders think differently. They say you evolved in chaos and violence. Perhaps you can do what we cannot." Sarah looked at the images of dying worlds. She thought about the 1 million refugees on this station. She thought about Earth, far away and safe for now. "We'll try," she said simply. Zilani touched her arm gently with one of his hands. "We know you will die fighting them. That is what Deathworlders do, but maybe your sacrifice will teach us something new." Sarah smiled, showing her teeth. Zilani stepped back in fear. "We're not planning to die," she said. "We're planning to win." For the first time since they arrived, Zilani looked hopeful. It was a small hope, but it was there. Outside in the dark between stars, something watched Sanctuary Station through electronic eyes. The Devourers had found them. Soon, they would come. Sarah spent her first week at Sanctuary Station trying to understand the aliens around her. It wasn't easy. Most of them ran away when they saw humans coming. Children hid behind their parents. Adults whispered in languages the translation computers couldn't handle. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked day and night in the station's medical bay. She studied alien biology and tried to improve the translation systems. The Cathera had given them basic translators, but many refugee languages weren't in the database. "It's fascinating," Elena told Sarah during one of their evening meetings. "These beings evolved on worlds with gentle climates and abundant food. Look at their teeth, flat for eating plants. Their eyes are on the sides of their heads to watch for danger. They're all prey animals, and we're predators," Sarah said. "Exactly. To them, we look like walking nightmares. Forward-facing eyes means hunter. Sharp canine teeth means meat-eater. Powerful muscles mean we can catch and kill." Sarah touched her own teeth with her tongue. She had never thought about how frightening a smile might look to someone who had never seen a predator before. Admiral Marcus Thompson joined them in the medical bay. He carried data tablets filled with information about the Devourers. "I've been studying their attack patterns with the Cathera military advisors," he said. "It's not good news." He activated a holographic display showing star maps. Red dots marked destroyed systems. Yellow dots showed current refugee populations. The Devourers don't just attack randomly, they're systematic. They start at the edge of populated space and work their way inward. They destroy everything in their path. Sarah studied the map. "How long between attacks?" "Usually 10 to 20 years. Enough time for civilizations to rebuild and forget. Then they come back stronger than before." Elena looked up from her alien biology texts. "That doesn't make sense. Why wait? If they're so powerful, why not just sweep through the galaxy quickly?" Marcus highlighted different sections of the map. "Because they learn. Each attack cycle, they encounter new weapons and new tactics. They adapt and improve. When they return, they're ready for everything that worked against them before. How many times has this happened? Sarah asked. According to Kithara records, at least 50 cycles. Maybe more. Their history goes back millions of years. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. 50 cycles meant billions of dead civilizations, trillions of individual beings consumed by an enemy that learned from every victory. What happened to the species that were here before the Kithara? She asked. Marcus's expression darkened. Gone, completely extinct. The only record of them is in archaeological sites on dead worlds. A soft chime announced that someone wanted to enter the medical bay. Elena opened the door to find Keeper Zilani waiting outside. With him stood two other aliens Sarah hadn't met before. Captain Chen, Zilani said, I would like you to meet survivors from other worlds. This is Healer Moss of the Verdani people, and Engineer Crick of the Stellar Collective. Healer Moss looked like a walking tree with silver bark and leaves instead of hair. Engineer Crick resembled a large insect with 6 arms and crystal-clear wings. Both aliens stayed near the doorway ready to run if the humans made any threatening moves. They have information about Devourer technology, Zilani explained. Information that might help you understand what we face. Engineer Crick spoke, in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. The translator worked better with his language. I was on Stellar Prime when they came. Our defense fleet had the best ships in the sector. Quantum shields, plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes. We thought we were ready. Crick's wings trembled as he remembered. Their first wave was easy to defeat. Our weapons cut through their ships like paper. We celebrated. We thought we had won. But they came back, Sarah guessed. The next day. Their ships looked the same. But our weapons did. Nothing. The quantum shields that had protected us before meant nothing to them. They had learned to pass right through them, Healer Moss spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. On my world, we tried biological weapons, diseases that would attack their organic components. It worked for exactly one battle. They adapted? Worse. They took our diseases and made them stronger. Then they used them against us. My people died from plagues we had created ourselves. Sarah exchanged looks with Marcus and Elena. The pattern was becoming clear. Every victory against the Devourers was temporary. Every weapon became useless after one use. Has anyone ever beaten them permanently? Sarah asked. Zilani's 4 arms gestured sadly. There are legends, stories of ancient warriors who held them back for a time, but always, eventually, the Devourers return. Tell me about these legends. They speak of beings from impossible worlds, creatures who thrived in chaos and violence. The stories call them Deathworlders, but most scholars thought they were myths. Elena leaned forward. What made them different? The legends say they didn't fight like civilized beings. They used unpredictable tactics. They embraced chaos instead of order. They were... Zilani paused, searching for words. They were like natural disasters with intelligence. Engineer Crick's wings buzzed nervously. The stories also say they were terrifying to fight alongside. They cared nothing for proper military formations or rational strategy. But they won battles others couldn't? Marcus asked. Sometimes, for a while, but always at a terrible cost. Sarah walked to the holographic display and studied the pattern of destroyed worlds. She tried to imagine the battles that had been fought there. Civilized fleets using advanced technology against an enemy that learned from every encounter. What if the problem isn't the weapons? She said slowly. What if the problem is thinking like a civilization? Marcus frowned. What do you mean? Look at this pattern. Every species fights the same way. Organized fleets, standardized tactics, predictable strategies. The Devourers have seen it all before. Elena nodded, understanding. But humans evolved differently. We evolved to be unpredictable. Earth wasn't a gentle world, Sarah continued. We had predators, natural disasters, climate changes, diseases. We learned to adapt quickly and think creatively. Healer Moss stepped closer, his fear overcome by curiosity. You think this makes you dangerous to the Devourers? I think it makes us different. And different might be enough. Zilani's large eyes showed something Sarah hadn't seen before. Hope mixed with terror. You would really fight them? Knowing you will probably die? Sarah smiled, and all 3 aliens stepped backward. She had forgotten how frightening human expressions could look. We'll fight them, But we're not planning to die. A warning alarm suddenly echoed through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Zilani touched a communication device on his belt. "What is happening?" he asked in his own language. The reply came quickly, and Zilani's skin turned pale blue. "Devourer scouts," he said. "3 ships, at the edge of the system. They're scanning our defenses." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. The enemy had found them. How long do we have? Based on previous patterns, perhaps 2 weeks before the main fleet arrives. Marcus was already moving toward the door. "We need to see those scout ships. We need to understand what we're facing. And we need to start planning," Sarah added. "It's time to show these Devourers what Deathworlders can do." As they hurried toward the station's command center, Sarah noticed something interesting. The aliens were still afraid of the humans, but now they were following them instead of running away. Fear was giving way to hope. It was a small change, but it was a start. Sarah stared at the screens in Sanctuary Station's command center. 3 dark shapes moved through space at the edge of the system. The Devourer scout ships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They pulsed with strange lights and moved in ways that hurt to watch. "They're scanning everything," reported Commander Hayes from the human fleet. "Our ships, the station, even the star itself." Keeper Zilani stood beside Sarah, his 4 arms working frantically at alien control panels. "This is how it always begins. The scouts study our defenses for days or weeks. Then they report back to the main fleet." "How big will that fleet be?" Admiral Marcus asked. "The last invasion had over 1,000 ships, but that was 50 years ago. They grow stronger each cycle." Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from the data she was studying. "I need to see the historical records. Everything you have about previous invasions." Zilani hesitated. "Some of those records are disturbing. They contain images of worlds dying." "We need to see them," Sarah said firmly. "We can't fight an enemy we don't understand." Zilani led them to the station's archive center. The room was filled with crystalline storage devices that held millions of years of galactic history. He touched one of the crystals, and holographic displays came to life around them. Sarah watched in horror as the story unfolded. The first recorded Devourer attack was over 2 million years ago. A peaceful civilization called the Builders had created beautiful cities across 100 worlds. In just 3 months, everything was gone. "They came in ships we had never seen," the ancient record stated. "Living vessels that healed their own damage. They consumed our cities, our people, even our oceans. Nothing remained but empty rock." The records continued through dozens of cycles. Each time the galaxy's civilizations would rebuild. They would develop new technologies, new weapons, new strategies, and each time, the Devourers returned stronger than before. "Look at this," Elena said, pointing to a section of data. "The Devourers aren't just adapting to weapons. They're absorbing technology and biology from everything they encounter." Marcus studied the tactical analyses. Each invasion, they incorporate new abilities, shields they've encountered, weapons systems they've faced, even genetic traits from species they've consumed. "That's impossible," Sarah said. "No species can adapt that quickly, unless they're not really a species anymore," Elena replied. She activated another set of records, these ones much older. They showed a civilization called the First Ones, who had ruled the galaxy long before any current species existed. According to these fragments, the First Ones were incredibly advanced. They had technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level. They could transfer consciousness between bodies. They could combine organic life with artificial intelligence. Zilani's skin turned pale. "You think the Devourers were once the First Ones?" "I think something went wrong with their technology. Maybe an experiment that got out of control. Maybe a war that lasted too long. But yes, I think the Devourers are what the First Ones became." Sarah felt sick as she understood the implications. They're not just aliens with advanced technology. They're the corrupted remains of the galaxy's first great civilization. And they've been perfecting the art of consumption for 2 million years, Marcus added grimly. A new alarm sounded through the archive center. Commander Hayes' voice came, over the communication system. "Captain, the scouts are moving closer. They're launching smaller probe vessels toward the station." Sarah and her team hurried back to the command center. On the main screen, they could see tiny objects separating from the scout ships and heading their way. "Boarding pods?" Marcus asked. "No," Zilani said, checking his instruments. "Analysis probes. They'll try to dock with the station and download Our computer systems. Can we stop them? Our defense systems are designed to stop large ships, not small probes. Sarah watched the probes approach. There were dozens of them, moving in complex patterns that made them hard to target. What happens if they succeed? They'll learn everything about our defenses, our ship designs, our weapons. When the main fleet arrives, they'll be ready for anything we can do. An idea began forming in Sarah's mind. It was risky and probably crazy, but it might work. Elena, can our ship's computers be isolated from the station's network? Yes, we designed them that way for security. Why? Because I want the Devourers to learn about our defenses. I want them to think they know how we fight. Marcus stared at her. Sarah, that's suicide. If they know our capabilities, they'll prepare for conventional tactics, organized formations, predictable weapons, standard military doctrine. Sarah smiled grimly. Things we're not going to use. She opened a communication channel to all human ships. All captains, this is Captain Chen. Isolate your computer systems from the station network immediately. Then prepare for unconventional warfare protocols. The human captains responded quickly. Captain Rodriguez of the UES Defiant was first. Unconventional protocols? Sarah, we don't have any training for that. We're going to make it up as we go along. The Devourers are expecting us to fight like a civilization. Instead, we're going to fight like humans. Over the next hour, Sarah watched the Devourer probes dock with various parts of Sanctuary Station. They extended strange tendrils into the computer systems and began copying data. They're downloading everything, Zilani reported. Defense grids, weapon specifications, ship blueprints, tactical databases. Perfect, Sarah said. Let them learn. Let them prepare for the kind of battle they've fought 1,000 times before. Elena was working at another console, studying biological data about the Devourers themselves. Sarah, I'm finding something interesting in these records. The Devourers have a weakness. What kind of weakness? They're too perfect. Their adaptation ability is so advanced that they can't handle truly random events. Look at these battle reports. Every time something completely unpredictable happened, they had trouble responding. Marcus leaned over Elena's shoulder. Give me an example. 300 years ago, on a world called Chaos Prime, the Defenders were losing badly until their ammunition depot exploded by accident. The explosion created a chain reaction that destroyed half the Devourer landing force. But the interesting part is that the Devourers didn't adapt to prevent similar accidents. They couldn't, because accidents aren't predictable. Sarah felt excitement, building. They can adapt to weapons and tactics, but not to pure chaos. Exactly. Their strength comes from analyzing patterns and developing countermeasures, but chaos has no pattern to analyze. The probes finished their data collection and returned to the scout ships. Within hours, the scout ships themselves departed, heading back toward the outer system. How long until the main fleet arrives? Sarah asked. Zilani checked his calculations. 10 days, perhaps 12. That's not much time to prepare. Prepare for what? We can't match their numbers or their technology. Sarah looked around the command center at the assembled aliens and humans. Fear was written on every face, but also determination. We're not going to match them. We're going to confuse them. We're going to hit them with tactics so chaotic and unpredictable that their adaptation systems won't know how to respond. And, if it doesn't work? Zilani asked quietly. Then we die fighting instead of waiting to be consumed. But I think it will work. Elena was still studying the biological data. There's something else, Sarah. The Devourers don't just adapt their technology. They adapt their biology too, but biological adaptation takes time, even with their advanced abilities. How much time? Based on these records, several hours for minor changes, days for major ones. Marcus understood immediately. If we can keep changing our tactics faster, then they can adapt. Then we stay ahead of them, Sarah finished. At least for a while. She opened another communication channel, this time to all the refugee ships around the station. This is Captain Chen of the human fleet. I know many of you are afraid. You've seen the Devourers destroy everything you loved. But in 10 days, we're going to try something that's never been tried before. We're going to fight chaos with chaos. And we're going to need your help. The responses came slowly at first, then faster as word spread through the refugee population. Engineers offering to modify ships, soldiers volunteering to learn new tactics, even civilians asking how they could contribute. They're willing to fight, Zilani said, sounding amazed. Everyone's willing to fight when they have nothing left to lose, Sarah replied. The question is whether we can teach them to fight like humans. Outside, in the darkness between stars, the main Devourer fleet was already moving. 1,000 ships of living metal and corrupted flesh, confident in their inevitable victory. They had no idea what they were flying into. Sarah stood in the modified war room aboard Sanctuary Station, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every ship in the system. 10 days had passed since the scout ships left, and now long-range sensors showed the approaching Devourer fleet. 1,200 ships, Admiral Marcus reported grimly. Bigger than any previous invasion force on record. Around the table, alien commanders from a dozen different species studied the tactical displays. They looked nervous. Most of their races had never fought alongside predators before. Captain Chen, said Fleet Commander Jorik of the Stellar Collective, our combined fleet has only 300 ships. Many are refugee vessels with minimal weapons. Numbers don't matter if we fight them the way they expect, Sarah replied. Dr. Vasquez, show them what we've learned. Elena activated a new display, showing Devourer adaptation patterns. Every species in galactic history has fought the same way. Organized formations, coordinated attacks, logical strategies. The Devourers have seen it all. But humans evolved differently, Sarah continued. We evolved in chaos. We learned to hunt in packs, to adapt quickly, to survive when everything went wrong. She touched a control and the display changed to show Earth's history. Predators stalking prey, natural disasters forcing rapid adaptation, humans surviving ice ages, droughts, and volcanic winters. This is what we call the Death World Doctrine. Never fight the same way twice. Embrace chaos as a weapon. Make the enemy adapt to patterns that don't exist. Commander Kess of the Verdani Defense Force raised a leaf-covered arm. This sounds like madness. Exactly, Sarah smiled, causing several aliens to step back. Controlled madness. Marcus activated tactical recordings from the past week's training exercises. Human ships moved in seemingly random patterns, appearing to flee before suddenly turning to attack. They used weapons in combinations that made no logical sense. Look at this engagement, Marcus said. Captain Torres in the Resilient appears to retreat, but she's actually leading the enemy into a minefield deployed by Captain Kim in the fortress. Neither captain told the other what they were planning. How did they coordinate without communication? Asked Healer Moss. They didn't. They both reacted to the same situation using human instincts. Instincts that tell us to create chaos for our enemies while finding opportunities in that chaos ourselves. Dr. Elena stepped forward. We've been studying Devourer biology for 10 days. Their adaptation system is incredibly powerful, but it has limits. They need time to analyze threats and develop countermeasures. She showed recordings of previous battles. Watch how they respond to new weapons. First contact, they take damage. Second contact, they've developed partial resistance. Third contact, they're immune. The key is never giving them a second contact, Sarah said. We hit them once with each tactic, then move on to something completely different. Keeper Zelani's 4 arms gestured uncertainty. But Captain, this requires splitting our forces. Small groups acting independently. If one group is overwhelmed, then the others adapt and keep fighting. That's how pack hunters work. That's how humans survived on a death world. Warning sirens suddenly echoed through the station. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system. Enemy fleet detected at the system's edge. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, but her voice remained steady. All ships to combat positions. Remember, the moment they arrive, we show them something they've never seen before. The next few hours passed in tense preparation. Human ships took positions throughout the system, apparently scattered randomly. Alien vessels followed pre-planned routes that seemed to make no strategic sense. Incoming transmission, Rodriguez reported. The Devourers are trying to communicate. Put it through. A voice filled the command center speaking in perfect galactic standard. It sounded almost human, but with an electronic undertone that made everyone's skin crawl. Defenders of this system, you will surrender your biological and technological distinctiveness. Resistance will be analyzed and overcome. Your adaptation to our methods is inevitable. Sarah picked up the communication device. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. You want our distinctiveness? Come and take it. She cut the transmission and opened a channel to all allied ships. All units, this is Captain Chen. Operation Chaos begins now. Show these parasites what Death World evolution looks like. The Devourer fleet entered the system, in perfect formation. Massive bioships moved in precise patterns, their hulls pulsing with organic lights. They had analyzed the station's defenses and were prepared for conventional resistance. Instead, they met madness. The first attack came from an unexpected direction. Captain Williams and the Savage dove straight down from above the system's plane, firing every weapon she had at a single Devourer ship. Before the enemy could respond, she activated her ship's self-destruct and rammed them at full speed. The explosion destroyed both ships and damaged 3 others nearby. "Williams!" Sarah shouted. But it was too late. She knew what she was doing, Marcus said quietly. "Look at the Devourer formation. They're breaking apart, trying to defend against similar attacks." The second wave hit them from a completely different angle. 3 refugee ships, modified with human-designed weapons, appeared. To flee in panic, the Devourers pursued, thinking it was a standard retreat. Instead, the fleeing ships led them through a cloud of debris that had been seeded with proximity mines. The explosions weren't powerful enough to destroy the bioships, but they were. Completely unexpected. "The Devourers are adapting," Elena reported from her sensor station. "Their armor is shifting to absorb similar explosions." "Good," Sarah said. "Now they're ready for mine warfare. Rodriguez, implement Chaos Protocol 7. Rodriguez grinned as he sent new orders. Protocol 7 was his own invention. Nuclear. Torpedoes filled with Earth bacteria instead of warheads. The weapons hit 3 Devourer ships and released clouds of aggressive microorganisms. To the aliens, it looked like a failed biological attack. The bacteria couldn't survive in space and died within minutes, but that wasn't the point. While the Devourers were analyzing the biological threat, human ships emerged from asteroid cover and fired kinetic rounds at their engines. "They're trying to adapt to biological warfare now," Elena reported. "Their immune systems are shifting." "Perfect. Now they're vulnerable to chemical attacks. Captain Torres, you're up." The Resilient emerged from behind a moon, firing shells filled with industrial acid. The chemicals ate through Devourer armor that was now optimized for biological threats, and so it continued for hours. Each attack was different from the last. Kinetic weapons gave way to plasma cannons. Plasma cannons gave way to electromagnetic pulses. When the Devourers adapted to electromagnetic attacks, human ships started ramming them with cargo containers full of radioactive waste. "This is insane," Commander Jorek said, watching the battle unfold. "There's no strategy at all." "That is the strategy," Sarah replied. "Look at their formation now." The Devourer fleet, once perfectly organized, was scattered across the system. Individual ships were adapting to different threats, making them vulnerable to attacks they weren't configured for. "Their coordination is breaking down," Marcus observed. "They can't maintain fleet coherence when every ship is adapting to different threats." But the tide was turning. Despite their confusion, the Devourers still had superior numbers and technology. Human ships were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. "Sarah," Elena called out, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups in the remaining Devourer ships. They're preparing some kind of superweapon." On the display, the surviving bioships began moving together, forming a new pattern. Energy flowed between them like blood through veins. "They're linking up," Zilani said, "creating a collective weapon system." Sarah watched the enemy formation and felt cold understanding wash over her. The Devourers had learned from the chaos. They were adapting not just to individual attacks, but to the concept of unpredictability itself. "They're going to synchronize their adaptation systems," Elena warned. "If they succeed, they'll be able to counter multiple threat types simultaneously." Sarah looked around the command center. Half their fleet was gone. The survivors were scattered and running low on ammunition. The aliens were looking at her with expressions that said they had done their best, but it wasn't enough. She opened a communication channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. We've shown them chaos. We've shown them unpredictability. Now it's time to show them what it really means to be from a death world." She paused, thinking of Earth, of humanity's long climb from primitive hunters to star travelers, of all the times their species had faced extinction and survived through pure stubborn refusal to give up. All ships, all crews. One final protocol. Show them what humans do when there's nothing left to lose. Across the system, human ships began changing course. Not retreating, not maneuvering for advantage. All of them, every single vessel, turned directly toward the Devourer fleet and accelerated to maximum speed. They were done being clever. Now they would just be human. Sarah watched the tactical display as every human ship in the fleet turned toward the enemy. The Devourer bioships were linking together, forming a massive collective weapon that pulsed with stolen energy from a dozen different civilizations. "Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez said quietly, The aliens are asking what we're doing. Tell them we're being human, Sarah replied. The first ship to reach the Devourer formation was the Defiant, commanded by Captain Rodriguez's sister Maria. Her vessel had lost engines and weapons during the earlier fighting, but she still had one thing that worked: her ship's fusion reactor. This is for Earth, Maria's voice came over the communication channel just before she overloaded her reactor and rammed the center of the Devourer collective. The explosion was visible from across the system. White fire consumed 3 bioships and disrupted the energy flows connecting the others. The collective weapon began to fall apart, but more human ships were already incoming. Captain Kim in the fortress had filled his cargo bays with antimatter containment pods set to unstable configurations. When Devourer weapons tore through his hull, the pods ruptured and released pure annihilation energy. Captain Torres in the Resilient had programmed her ship's computer to play Earth music at maximum volume on all frequencies while she flew straight into a cluster of bioships. The last thing the Devourers heard from her was an ancient human war song as her ship exploded. "They're not trying to win anymore," Keeper Zalani said, his voice filled with amazement and horror. "They're just trying to hurt the enemy as much as possible before they die." "That's what Deathworlders do," Admiral Marcus replied. "We evolved from pack hunters who would fight predators twice their size to protect the group." On the display, the Devourer formation was beginning to collapse. Ships that had survived millions of years of warfare were being destroyed by enemies who refused to follow any logical pattern. The bioships tried to adapt, but how do you adapt to someone who doesn't care about surviving? "The Devourers are retreating," Elena reported from her sensor station. "Their outer ships are pulling back." Sarah opened a channel to the remaining human vessels. Only 4 ships were left operational, including her own Indomitable. "All ships form up on my position. We're going after their command ship." "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "we don't have enough firepower left." "We don't need firepower. We need to show them something they'll never forget." The Devourer command ship was enormous, larger than Sanctuary Station itself. Its hull was covered with biomechanical components that had been stolen from hundreds of different species. It pulsed with dark energy and radiated malevolent intelligence. As the 4 remaining human ships approached, the command ship's weapons began charging. Energy beams and biomissiles prepared to fire. "All ships, remember the most important thing about being human," Sarah said into her communicator. "We're really good at making things up as we go along." The Indomitable accelerated toward the command ship's central section. Behind her, the other 3 ships spread out to attack from different angles. Sarah's plan was simple: ram the command ship's reactor core and overload it with her own ship's fusion plant. It would probably kill everyone on the Indomitable, but it might take the command ship with them. But as they approached, something unexpected happened. The alien refugee ships that had been hanging back suddenly appeared on Sarah's sensors. Hundreds of vessels emerged from hiding behind asteroids and moons. "This is Commander Jorik of the Stellar Collective," came a voice over the communication channel. "We've been watching you humans fight. We've learned something today." "Jorik, get your ships out of here," Sarah ordered. "This is suicide." "Yes, it is. But sometimes that's what survival requires." The alien ships didn't ram like the humans had. Instead, they did something more frightening. They began to improvise. Kithira vessels fired their emergency escape pods at Devourer ships, but the pods were filled with industrial explosives instead of lifeboats. Verdani ships extended their agricultural equipment and used it as improvised weapons. Engineering vessels from the Stellar Collective began dismantling themselves and throwing the pieces at the enemy. "They're learning chaos," Elena said with wonder in her voice. The Devourer command ship found itself surrounded by hundreds of vessels that were no longer fighting like civilized beings. They were fighting like desperate survivors who had nothing left to lose. But the command ship was too powerful. Its weapons began systematically destroying the alien vessels. Dozens died in the first minute of combat. Sarah made her decision. "Marcus, take command of the fleet. Keep teaching them to fight like humans." "Sarah, what are you doing?" "Something stupid and heroic, the kind of thing humans are famous for." She locked out the bridge controls and programmed the Indomitable for a direct collision course with the command ship's central core. Then she grabbed the ship's communication system and opened a channel to the entire Devourer fleet. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. You came here expecting to consume another civilization. You thought you understood how war works, but you've never fought Deathworlders before." The Indomitable accelerated toward the command ship its hull glowing from atmospheric friction as it entered the bioship's defensive envelope. "We don't fight to win. We fight to make sure you lose. We don't fight for territory or resources. We fight for the right to keep existing. And when we can't win..." Devourer weapons hammered the Indomitable, tearing through shields and armor. But the ship kept coming. "We make sure you remember us." The collision was spectacular. The Indomitable struck the command ship's core section at nearly the speed of light, its fusion reactors overloading on impact. The explosion tore through both ships and sent shockwaves across the entire battlefield. When the light faded, the massive command ship was breaking apart. But more importantly, something had changed in the Devourer fleet. For the first time in millions of years, they were retreating. Admiral Marcus, now in command of the 3 remaining human ships, watched in amazement as bioships across the system began withdrawing. They moved in disorganized groups, their perfect formations broken. "Why, are they leaving?" asked Commander Jorik over the communication channel. "We barely hurt their main fleet." Dr. Elena, who had transferred to Marcus's ship, was studying the sensor readings. "Because they can't adapt to what we just showed them. They can adapt to weapons and tactics, but not to the concept of fighting without caring about victory. The Devourers have spent millions of years consuming civilizations that fought to survive," Marcus said. "They never encountered species that fought to ensure their enemies would remember them." Over the next few hours, the entire Devourer fleet withdrew from the system. They left behind dozens of destroyed bioships and took with them a new understanding of what it meant to face Deathworlders. A week later, Admiral Marcus stood in the rebuilt command center of Sanctuary Station. Around him, representatives from dozens of species were planning something that had never existed before. A combined fleet using human tactical doctrine. "The Devourers will be back," Keeper Zilani said during one of their planning sessions. "They always return eventually." "Let them come," replied Commander Jorik. "We're not the same species we were before humans arrived." Dr. Elena was working with alien engineers to establish what they were calling the Deathworld Academy. It would train beings from across the galaxy in the art of chaos warfare. "The motto is Sarah's idea," Elena explained. "She suggested it during one of our early planning sessions." She activated a holographic display showing the Academy's symbol, a human handprint surrounded by the emblems of dozens of alien species. Below it were words in Galactic Standard, "In chaos we trust." Marcus smiled as he read it. Sarah would have liked that. Her sacrifice had taught the galaxy something new. Sometimes the best way to preserve civilization was to learn how to be uncivilized. Months later, when the first graduating class of the Deathworld Academy took command of their modified vessels, they carried with them a simple message from humanity. The universe was a dangerous place full of things that wanted to consume everything in their path, but it was also full of beings who were willing to fight back no matter the odds. And sometimes that was enough. In the deep space between stars, something watched the Academy's ships through electronic eyes. The Devourers had learned from their encounter with humanity. They were adapting, preparing new strategies for the next time they returned. But they had also learned fear. For the first time in millions of years, they understood that there were things in the galaxy that could surprise them. The war was far from over, but the galaxy now had teachers who could show others how to fight like Deathworlders. And in a universe full of impossible odds and ancient terrors, that made all the difference. Sarah Chen was gone, but her lesson lived on. When you can't win, make sure the enemy never forgets the cost of victory. The stars were full of chaos now. And chaos, as any human could tell you, was exactly what the galaxy needed.